What's up, and welcome back to the Real Estate Roundup, where today we're going to be rounding up all of the information and news on solar. So, I think solar has been a very prominent and talked about and popular for some homeowners energy solution that's been pitched and promoted by a lot of people, including certain real estate agents as well. So, today we're going to be talking all about what is the benefit of solar, whether or not there are any benefits of solar, and really giving you guys the truth behind whether or not you should invest in solar panels in your new home that you just bought or in a home they've owned for a while as well. So my name is Kobe Zen, and I am the host of today's Real Estate Roundup, and I'm joined here by my co-hosts Tony Flores and Andres Martinez, both real estate professionals here in the great state of Texas. How are you guys doing today?
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point actually. In a place where there is a lot of sun, right, in your mind, it makes a lot of sense. But today, I think we're going to be dispelling some of the myths and really giving you guys the truth behind whether or not this is a good investment. So let's dig right on in because I think there's a lot to talk about. So we'll just start off, right? So we'll just start off and just kind of talk about what is the hype behind solar, right? Why is there so many people considering getting solar panels? Why is there so many people promoting solar panels? What is the hype behind this? I think a lot of people are not understanding. And Tony, I'd love to kind of get your take on this first because I know you've been involved with a lot of this on the back end with certain clients and also vendors as well.
So there's been a lot of discussion, hype, and promotion of solar, how solar can save you money on energy bills. It can reduce your energy from a couple hundred down to, $20, $50 a month or things like that. So just want to be upfront. I do not own solar. I've never sold solar, but I hear from solar salespeople, and I hear from people that are affected by solar panels that are on their home when they try to sell it. So I'm going to give you a perspective from someone just hearing a lot of different conversations, and also going to talk about there's been so many solar companies that have gone bankrupt. 2023, 2024, there have been over 100 big solar companies that have gone bankrupt. So what does that mean to you as a homeowner, and if you have solar panels that you bought from someone that's gone bankrupt? Certainly that's an issue. But we're going to go through a couple of different articles on what I've been reading, and also some conversations I've had with people in the industry as well.
So that's really interesting. I think we're gonna definitely revisit that. Where these solar companies, right? They've sold the solar panels, they've installed it, and now they've gone bankrupt. And there's a lot of people on payment plans for these solar panels. So what happens to that, right? So that I'm sure there's a lot of complications there. But Andres, I know you're on the new home sales side. So have you seen, I guess, the similar type of hype for solar panels and enthusiasm from either builders or even new home buyers as well, getting into new construction homes?
So as far as builders, for the most part, builders are not gonna place any solar panels just because in the climate we're in, trying to minimize the expense for a potential buyer is you're trying to keep that cost down. Another thing is when it comes to solar panels, a lot of people, let's just say maybe like 7 or 8 years back, like 2015, back in those days, solar panels was like the only option to reduce or to help you lower like your bills. With technology, there's a lot of new technologies that you can insulate your home. You get better windows, and you could keep your home still a little bit better, where your home could be more energy efficient. So that's something that clients have to weigh when it comes to like the solar panel option. Technology has come along to where a lot of other options we have to think about when making a decision about solar.
Yeah, and I mean from the client's perspective, I know we were talking a little bit about before the show. Have you seen new home buyers, people who are getting into new construction homes? Have you seen them, ask a lot about solar as well? Has that been like a topic of discussion?
I do think it's something that not just new home buyers, but home buyers, like the first question is, should I get solar panels? And then what I always tell them is, hey, you need to make sure that you research some of these companies, make sure that they're good companies. The last thing you want is for them to go bankrupt, right? But the biggest question that I always tell people when it comes to solar panels, what's your break even point, right? Because that's every one of my friends that owns solar panels. They're like, in 7 years, we will break even. In 8 years, we will break even. The reason they're mentioning that they will break even is because there's an upfront cost. And then sometimes you're in a payment plan for a specific amount of years for you to get back 20, 30, $40,000 back. You would have to save that in a specific amount of time. From most of my friends' feedbacks, it's about 7 or 8 years before they would get enough savings to cover the initial cost.
Okay, yeah, so that's actually that's a good point because one of the big selling points of solar companies is that this will, if you install these solar panels on your home, it's going to save you a certain amount of money in your energy bills, right? That's pretty much, I think, for the most part, the main pitch coming from these companies. And I know, Tony, you've been in conversations, right, with a lot of these salespeople and people who have solar panels installed on their homes as well. So, what from what right, what are the actual costs of getting a solar panel installed here in 2024, right? I know it's changed a lot throughout the years. We can talk about why that is later on. But what is the cost of installing one of them? And what are the savings that are being promoted as far as, what that can do for your energy bills?
So the solar panels, all solar panels, they're created, they're not created equally. So um, the costs associated with solar panels can be anywhere from, from what I've seen, spend 20 to 40, even more than $50,000 in some cases. So, you know, think about this. You're spending 20, 30, 40,000 on solar panels. That's the same as financing a car. And in a lot of cases, the financing rates of solar panels are going to be a lot higher than you can get for standard type of financing things. So why do where people get stuck with solar panels is they don't outlive the benefit of their costs that they're going into it. They're not being in that house for that threshold of when they actually will see a return. Will start at a zero because when they initially buy those solar panels and they're financing those payments, right? If they pay cash for them, well, basically they're prepaying for their energy costs for X number of years. I mean, is that a good idea? I mean, would you want to prepay for all of your insurance for the next, 10 years? Why would we want to do these types of things? It just doesn't make sense for a lot of people because look, the average homeowner will be in their home and right now it's roughly about 12 years. So what if they get into that home and probably the younger they are, really the more they will change house before that 12-year mark. So if they're in their house for 2 years and they decide to get solar panels, and there's an on a good side would be an 8-year threshold when they're actually going to be at net zero and start recouping benefits from that solar panel that are still being financed. That was financed for the original buyer. Is the next seller going to finance them, or is that seller going to have to pay it off at closing? In a lot of cases, the buyers are going to want the sellers to pay it off because they may not even qualify for the house payment plus the solar panel payment. Now, there was published on Texas Realtor how solar panels affect transactions. This is from October 2021, where that was the case. The realtor listed a property, and because the seller had to move out of state, all right, So the first buyer, they wanted to buy the house, but the solar company at that time didn't respond for request on how to get this thing resolved for 3 weeks. And what happens if that solar company is bankrupt now? Like where these loans and these things probably are being off market, being sold from one company to the next, and how's that being serviced? So they lost the first buyer because they didn't respond for 3 weeks. Okay, the title company was trying to contact them. Took 2 weeks to get a response from the title company and solar company. You know, do the solar companies provide an adequate staff to answer those types of questions, or they're just pushing to sell more, sell more, sell more? Okay, there were 16 years remaining on the original 20-year lease, and of course, the buyers didn't really want to pay for it. A second buyer wasn't able to qualify the mortgage once the additional amount was factored into it. So, you're gonna when I've talked to appraisers as well, and in appraiser forums in different groups, appraisers don't seem to add a benefit or a dollar benefit to having solar unless those panels are paid off. They're not going to add value in a lot of appraisals. The other part is, so essentially it was a big mess for this, for the sellers. It was a big problem. Do you foresee something? Is that reasonable that something like that would happen to you? To me, it's a very common scenario. Had someone that was under foreclosure. They had originally purchased over $40,000 in solar panels, and unfortunately, they're behind on their solar. They're behind on that payment. They're behind on their mortgage payment. It just compounds the problem trying to get this thing resolved. The solar trying to reach out to the solar company to settle, to reduce it, because if they don't settle, then and they do go into foreclosure, then that whole everything's going to be wiped out. That lien is going to get wiped out. It just seems to be a financing nightmare to finance solar panels. It's not really a cost benefit for so many people. So I would super caution people to weigh the total cost of it and what it's going to cost them for the first however long they think they're going to be in it. In my opinion, it's not worth it for a majority of the people who are making those decisions to buy it, but they're being pushed by salespeople, and that's the problem.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point there where, appraisers, they're not seeing the values, right? They're not seeing the value of solar panels on the home unless it's paid off. So, just from what you've heard, you may have the answer, you may not, but, what type of value, monetary value that you can get from a paid off solar panel on a home? Is it more or less or pretty much the same as that 30,000 range that people are getting their solar panels for?
Yeah, absolutely. You will not get the value the money that you put into the solar. You're not going to see that as far as the same amount you're going to get dollar for dollar, right? And it's like when you buy a pool, right? You buy a pool if you buy a pool for your enjoyment. So if you want to buy solar panels for your enjoyment, or for you feel like you're doing goodwill for the environment or doing something that makes you feel good, know that that's probably going to be your biggest benefit to it. It doesn't necessarily mean, so when you buy a pool, right, you're going to enjoy it. You're going to be out there, of course there's maintenance associated with it, but you're going to enjoy it and be out there, invite friends over, pool parties, all that kind of stuff. So when you pay $40,000 for a pool, are you going to see a $40, comparison to a, are you going to see increase the value of your home by 40,000? The answer is really going to be no, but you're going to pay for the enjoyment of the pool, right? For solar panels, you're paying for the a reduced cost of some electricity bills. How much electricity are you saving? Probably depends on how well those panels are built, and of course, there's lots of issues that can come up with them being on your roof when they're placed on it. I've seen solar panels on a roof that looked like it was should have been replaced, 6 or 7 years ago. So you got to be really careful about the timing of when you put panels on your roof as well.
Yeah. So there's a lot of risks, I think, involved with that as well. I know Andres, we were talking a little bit about that right before the podcast as well. Whereas, what are some of the risks that, you foresee as a real estate professional with somebody installed the solar panel on their home, whether if it is a new home or whether it is, they've owned the home for a while and they just decided maybe 5 years, 10 years in owning the home, they wanted to install a solar panel all of a sudden. What are some of those risks and problems that can arise, whether if that's, insurance or just damages that could come from potential disasters?
So, to me, when we were talking about value, because value is also risk, right? So, what I might value as a benefit for my home or for a home, Tony might see a different value. To me, solar panels could have 100% value. To Tony as a buyer, if I'm a seller, Tony as a buyer could see no value to it. So, if there's no value to it from the buyer, then at that point, uh, you practically have made your property not sellable to a specific portion of the market. And it does like even if the appraiser gave it value, if the buyer doesn't give it any value, we won't even get to the appraiser. So that's one thing to take. What I value is not necessarily what someone else values. So when you're making a decision that might benefit you, um, you have to make the decision solely on the value it brings you, and not kind of assume that someone else is going to give it the same value. Like when we talk about solar panels, when we talk about water softeners, right? Some people might be okay walking around with dry skin. Other people might be okay paying their CPS bill. Um, so other things that might incur or other issues you might have, like if there's hail damage and if those solar panels end up being broken, who's going to pay for that? Is there a warranty, or does the insurance, right, does your insurance have to cover that? If your insurance has to cover that, as we know, insurance prices have gone up just due to the cost of the supplies to replace any thing that gets damaged, right? So is that an added cost to your insurance? So you save on your electricity bill, but now your insurance bill might be a little bit higher, right? When your insurance replaces your roof, in the case that there's something that happened to your roof, maybe hail damage, well, they gotta pay the roofing company. Somebody has to remove those solar panels, replace the roof, and then put the solar panels back. That's an added cost to the insurance company. Who's paying that, right? So some kind of way, the insurance company has to recoup that money. Um, and just understanding that those additional costs, yes, you might be saving $50 or $60 here, but you might be adding $80 or $100 somewhere else. That's a decision that whoever buys the solar panels has to make, right?
Yeah. So, it kind of offsets the costs a little bit if you think about it, right? If like you might be saving a certain amount every month on energy bills, but your insurance goes up by the same or even more, then, are you actually saving money, right? Or actually just, maybe paying more money at that point. I think I want to revisit now, the idea of bankruptcies, right? The solar companies going bankrupt, and kind of what happens there, because I can only imagine that creates a really messy situation, whether or not you're trying to sell the home or not, right? If you're financing, you're financing like a 30,000-40,000 solar panel, and all of a sudden that company goes out of business or is bankrupt, what happens, right? What exactly happens to that loan, to your payments? Are you still paying that off? Who are you paying that to? Tony, I know you got some information on that. I don't know if you wanted to share that or have some speculation as to what happens in that situation.
Well, I don't know I don't really know how it will affect, because again, there's over 100 solar companies that have gone bankrupt. If you want to look it up, we'll share it in the notes. as well. All you have to type in is solar companies going bankrupt, and you'll find something. But the main thing is, like, yes, how are they serviced? These are, solar panels are being pushed by salespeople, and these salespeople are being well compensated, but they're compensated because it's, in my opinion, these prices have just gone overboard. They're overinflated. People are paying too much for solar panels. And what happens, they have, at the end of the day, these loans, just like any loan, when you buy a mortgage from your mortgage company, a lot of times that loan gets moved somewhere else. Now you're paying a different company. That's likely the same thing's happening with these solar panel companies as well. They're using money to finance their debt to produce the solar panels. Then they need to sell that loan to somebody else. All right, and it might get moved around a bit. Someone's going to end up paying for the solar panels because the value of those loans is still out there. So the homeowners are still going to be responsible for the loan, but the question is, are you going to be left at the altar with the solar companies being able to warranty these solar panels if something breaks, or if there's some damage? Like, how are those companies going to service you is the bigger question than anything. Can you get a hold of them? How can you be serviced after the sale?
And when does your system get outdated?
Right. Yeah. They'll, and just like all kinds of technologies, look at your phone 5 years ago. The solar panels are in a similar situation. They do, of course, improve their technology and things like that. Yeah, I think that's the bigger question. Like, how can these be serviced if there's a problem? That to me is the biggest issue. So there's just too many questions and not enough rate. They're not really consolidated. There's solar panels companies popping up everywhere because they're chasing that. They're chasing the consumer who is willing and open to listen to a solar panel salesperson talk about the benefits. And there are some benefits, but the question is, how long will you enjoy the benefit? Or what point will you enjoy the benefits of a solar panel? And at what cost are you going to enjoy the benefits of a solar panel? That's the problem that I see that a lot of people haven't answered when they buy solar panels.
Yeah, and one of the other things I think, it's just, we alluded to a little bit in the earlier part of the show, but what do you guys think has, I guess, been the reason for why the solar panel cost has gone up so much over the years? Andres, I know you had a story about somebody who bought a solar panel 10 or so years ago, and it was, at a much lower price. Do you guys have any information or speculation as far as what has caused the solar panels to essentially skyrocket in price? I know you talked a little bit about, the people who are involved who are selling and being compensated. I'm sure that's one of the reasons as well.
I believe, like, in the initial stages, Kobe, technology was new. It wasn't available to everyone. And the Texas grid, because we live in Texas, right? Our Texas grid is not the best. So the energy companies saw a benefit to having a couple of their clients offset some of their energy with solar panels. And they were in the initial stages, there was huge incentives, right? Where it would cover a huge amount of the portion of the cost of the solar panel. What I've noticed as of recent, as I saw it at 20, recently I saw it up to like 40,000. And in those instances, what I'm thinking is, after COVID, a lot of these manufacturers are struggling to get parts. They're struggling to get stuff fabricated. And with the shortage of material, just the cost, everything in life has got higher. That could be a reason, or maybe it's just profitable enough where people could raise their margins. Maybe not enough competition, but from what I hear from Tony, there's a lot of them out.
One thing that on this article that we're going to share in the notes is there's been recently a change in solar lending practices. So the people that are funding, right? So there's the people that are funding the production of the solar panels see it as it's more financially risky. So they're delaying the payment structures that are required by the vendors. So it's putting downward pressure on the manufacturers. They need to get funded, and they're getting paid later, closer to the completion, and that is becoming a problem as well. So yeah, a lot there's just been, and Andres brought up a great point about just how's it hard to get even auto parts or home the cost to build homes have gone up. So certainly, I'm sure the cost to do solar has gone up as well.
And I
Yeah.
think there is a situations where solar panels are beneficial. Like you live in a ranch and you need a gate door open. You put a small solar panel, costs you a couple $100. It works well there. Or you're in an area where you cannot access electricity. Solar panels work well there, right? It might be uh, a little bit cheaper to get electricity that way, right? Is through solar panels, but it might not work for everyone. Some people are okay. Some people love them. From my feedback, most people, the break-even point is their biggest point of conversation when it comes to solar panels. And when it comes to selling, they're usually going to eat up that cost. Not always, but a lot of people don't see a benefit to it. And the seller has to eat that cost.
Yeah. And something else I think a lot of people will consider when it comes to like maybe getting solar panels. You mentioned, Andres, that we have our own grid, right? If you guys are listening to this and you're in certain areas of Texas, kind of what happened a couple years ago with the snowstorms and the power outages going on. So I think there's people who are considering maybe the benefits of solar are, if there's some type of power outage situation or, whatever, they can still provide power. Is that a possible argument?
I'm glad you brought that up, Kobe. The reason being is when we had that outage or that epic 100-year freeze, solar panels were obsolete. There was no sun. It was dark outside. You couldn't get any energy, right? You probably would have benefited more from having, if you live in a gas community, a generator, like a Generac, where it's automatically hooked up to the gas line that's by your city provider. And when your energy went out, it just kicks in and you never lost power, right? It just transitioned. So there's other options that technology has come so far along that we have more options that won't fail. They're not dependent on the sun being out, right? If your electricity goes out, the gas kicks in and you're moving forward.
Yeah. And that's a good point, right? Because those big generators that you get in your like backup generators, they don't cost nearly as much as installing solar panels, and there's not as much risk as well. Because if you think about what happened here where I am in Houston just last week, right, with the storms coming through, right, a lot of people's roofs got damaged. I'm sure that if they had solar panels installed on those roofs, the solar panels would have gotten damaged as well, and they would have not have gotten any power, regardless of whether or not they had panels installed. So those are different things that people should consider as well, I think. In one of the other questions that I had, kind of going back to what you were talking about, Tony, is these liens, right? If you're paying off solar panels, if you're on certain types of payment plans. I know last week in our previous episode, we talked about how HOAs here in Texas can actually foreclose on your home. Do these solar panel companies, do they have certain rights to do similar things like that, where they can actually foreclose on your home? Is that a risk involved as well?
No, in Texas, I don't believe they have the authority to do that. They have what's called a UCC, which is technically they're saying that they're not a lien per se, but it's certainly a debt tied to the home. So they're, of course, when people finance debt. So when you think about, okay, so you have a person borrowing the debt and you have the lender, right? So these lenders are they buy the debt, right? They're buying a fraction of that debt on the promise that this person is going to keep repaying. So they want that person to keep paying as long as, and they're not going to really give up on those payments. They're certainly going to expect them, and they're not going to go away when you're at the title company. So so what you need to do when you're talking about when you're talking about or thinking about solar is like talk to agents, talk to a realtor, talk to title companies. If you went into a title office that closes transactions and you say, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting solar," you would be surprised, or you can just call them up. You'd be surprised at some of the stories they have to tell you about how hard they are to get cleared, and to, of course, they can stop a lot of transactions from happening, or reduce the buyer pool significantly because less people are willing to take on that debt or pay more for that house, or the homeowner is now upside down because they have to pay that debt before or at the closing table. So all these things are factors that you know I believe it's a net, not going to net benefit the consumer, for from what so many different transactions that I've seen. Yeah, at the end of the day,
You have three options, guys.
yeah,
You either eat the debt, or you pay it off, or you pay to move it to your future home. There's no other option, right?
right. Yeah, and then think about what when we install solar panels, they're going to put holes in the roof. So how much does it cost to remove the solar panels? How much does it cost to repair the roof, the holes in the roof, and also to make that roof whole? Who's going to want to buy a house that they know solar panels were taken off of it, and there's potentially leak problems in the future. So it's just I think solar panels are a great idea when they're not placed on someone's property. Maybe you can there's certain places where you can own solar, but you own it off site. You're not putting it on your own home. So I think that's probably, if someone wants to do that, that might be the best option to look into.
That's it's funny that you mentioned that when you're installing solar panels, you're putting holes in the roof, right? So we're always like thinking about how we want to protect our roofs, and now you're intentionally damaging the roofs in a way. So you're really devaluing your property, if you think about it. And I'm just curious. So you guys are working with buyers, and this is for both of you. So you guys are both working with buyers on a pretty consistent basis. Have you guys ever ran into anybody who specifically requested a home with solar panels? Has that ever happened or ever come up for either one of you?
Not for me. I have had clients ask me about solar panels, but I always make them after the transaction's done and it's your home. You're welcome to do what's in the best interest for you and your family.
I have had one client that said they had solar panels. They have solar panels right now. They want to, whatever home they buy, they want to get solar panels on that new home. So again, kind of like Andres mentioned, in the past, the solar panels were much less expensive, but this person has gone through a whole cycle of enjoying the benefit of the solar panels. They are saying, I have enjoyed, or I've benefited from it, and I want to continue that benefit on my next property. She hasn't made that decision. She hasn't moved yet at this point, but she has told me that that's what she wants to do. Of course, when she sees the prices of the panels nowadays, she might second guess that. I'm not going to talk her out of it, but I will kind of lay out, the information and let her make that decision. Certainly, not.
Yeah, people just got to make that assessment for themselves.
Yeah.
Like, if it worked for you, it worked for you. I made the assessment for me, and in my situation, it doesn't work for me because I don't ever stay at a home longer than 7 years.
Right.
Man, most people are transitional about the 5 to 7 year mark.
Yeah.
So,
and as you get older, you're going to stay in that property longer. And she is in the kind of, upper ages, and she's that home that she's getting, the next home she's getting is going to be her her last
Forever home.
so she's comfortable with it, and she wants to move forward with it. Certainly, that's her choice, and that makes sense to her. That's perfectly fine with me. Happy to.
Maybe she wants one of the Tesla ones, right? Have you?
Yeah.
The charging boxes you could put in your garage, and then you could sell it back. The energy.
Yeah.
Maybe she could get one of those too.
Yeah.
That's what the thing with like solar, right? Like even in solar, there's technology that's coming along.
The solar shingles.
Yes. So there's all types of technology that's coming along.
Oh, yeah, and that's, I think, a good point that was made is, nobody's trying to talk you out of it. It's just, you want to get the correct information, the facts, before making a decision and being swayed one way or another. And this is, I think, we covered a lot of great information about the potential risks, benefits, and just kind of weighing that. Right. So I'm speaking to somebody who has experience, speaking to real estate professionals who've dealt with situations like this. I think that'll be probably the most beneficial for somebody who are considering this or looking for a home and maybe thinking about installing a solar panel or not, and the ramifications of that as well. But I think it's, we pretty much covered everything. Did you guys have any last thoughts before we wanted to wrap this up? Any last thoughts on solar or anything else?
The last thoughts, I think, is just, do your homework. Don't just rely on a salesperson to provide one bit of information, one way of looking at it. Do your information across the board, know the costs, know the benefits, and know what the long-term cost of that solar is going to be. And don't purchase solar assuming that it's going to increase the value of your home or you're going to get a benefit right off the bat, because the long-term results are certainly more important than the short-term.
And as far as, just like Tony said, educate yourself, do an assessment to see if it works for you. There is going to be situations where it works. If I owned a ranch, if I had a pool house, I would put a solar panel on that, because I do see a lot of benefit to something like that. But make sure that when you're working with somebody, work with a reputable company that's been in business for a long period of time. Don't just go. A lot of people make decisions off emotions. I think this is one of the decisions where you got to remove all emotions and just make sure that it works for you and your family before moving forward.
Yep. That's some great advice, and we'll wrap it up here for today's Real Estate Roundup. But guys, make sure to check the description, the show notes down below for the articles that we alluded to and the links to those, and make sure to reach out to either Tony or Andres if you guys are in the market for a home or getting ready to sell a home or maybe move into a new home as well. So they are real estate professionals here in Texas and San Antonio area, and they'll be able to help you out and make sure to give you the right information. You guys definitely, I think, got a lot of value from today's episode. But thank you guys tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Real Estate Roundup. Take care.